Assalamualaikum and good day, Doctor. For the literary analysis, the book that I have chosen is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zoulfa Katouh, a Canadian author. This is our group members consisting me, Zainul Arifin, Sharul Ahmid, Abdul Muhaimin, Tulasi, and also Tashan.
The novel entitled As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zoulfa Katouh is set in war-torn Syria, following Salama Kazab, the protagonist, a young pharmacy student caught between her duty to her people and her yearning for safety in a dangerous environment. Central to the story is Kov, a personification of her fear and guilt, as she navigates the trauma and devastation caused by war. Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis theory, which consists of ego, superego, and defense mechanisms, are used to analyze Salama's psychological struggles and her relationship with Koff as an external projection of her internal battles. Through Freud's psychoanalysis, Salma's conflict with Koff symbolizes the psychological fragmentation caused by war, illustrating the balance between fear, moral duty, and survival amidst the trauma and resilience of the human spirit.
We are now turning to the literature review. Zoulfa Katouh's debut novel, As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow, which was launched in 2022, has garnered widespread attention for its touching portrayal of war, trauma, and resilience. Due to its recent publication, there are only a few scholarly analyses of the novel. However, there are critical reviews and literary commentaries on this novel that provide valuable insights into its key symbolism, themes, and social and cultural context. Let's take a closer look at the key symbolism in the novel, which is the lemon tree. The lemon tree motif, which appears often throughout the novel, carries deep symbolic meaning. Super Summary calls it a representation of hope, resilience, and the enduring spirit of Syria despite its destruction. It further explains that the lemon tree reflects the protagonist's longing for peace and normal life and acts as a steady presence in a chaotic world. According to the Cedar Mill Library's review, lemons, which have bright and vibrant appearance, contrast sharply with the green setting of the novel. This contrast highlights how beauty and resilience can exist even in the darkest times. Last but not least, the title itself suggests that as long as the lemon trees grow, there is hope for Syria and its people. A recurring theme in the reviews is the novel's exploration of trauma through its protagonist, Salama Kasab. Salama's internal conflict is personified in the hallucination of Kawuf. Kawuf is an external manifestation of her mental agony. According to Medium's review, Kawuf serves as a powerful narrative device as he embodies Salama's survivor's guilt and fear while forcing her to confront the moral dilemma of fleeing Syria or staying to aid others. This reflects the psychological disarray that is common among individuals living through war. The fantasy hive further adds to these by highlighting how Katou's portrayal of Salama's trauma can be connected with the lived experiences of Syrian refugees. The hallucinations, flashbacks, and Salama's desperate attempts to suppress painful memories are realistic depictions of post traumatic stress disorder. Another recurring theme of the novel is love. Amidst the harsh realities of war, the novel introduces a gentle romance between Salama and Kenan. This relationship brings hope and shows the human nature to love even in hard times. According to the Fantasy Hive, the romance is carefully placed in the story. It gives brief moments of relief and highlights the importance of human connections in overcoming challenges. Moreover, Kenan's unwavering support for Salama underscores how a relationship can bring strength in darker times. Medium's review says that the romance is not merely a subplot but a vital part of Salama's healing journey. Kenan's presence helps Salama rediscover her sense of self, which had been destroyed by trauma and loss. Their relationship shows how love can be a source of strength and help people cope with difficult times. Moving on to the social and cultural aspect of the novel. The novel provides a closer look at the Syrian civil war. Beyond its narrative elements, the novel offers a poignant commentary on the Syrian civil war and its impact on individuals and communities. Medium's review underscores the novel's role in raising awareness about the ongoing crisis in Syria, which is often overlooked in global discourse. By centering the story on Salama's personal experiences, Katouh humanizes the conflict, making it accessible to a broad audience. The Fantasy Hive also notes that the novel's focus on a young female protagonist challenges traditional narratives about war, which often prioritize male perspectives. This shift not only enriches the literary landscape but also amplifies the voices of women in conflict zones who are frequently underrepresented in literature. Most analyses of As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow to date focus on its literary elements and devices. However, there has been little to no exploration of the novel through the lens of literary theory. This gap underscores the need for an analysis based on psychoanalytic criticism to explore the characters' psychological struggles and the story's deeper meaning. By addressing this gap, our analysis aims to provide a fresh perspective on the novel through psychoanalytic criticism, thereby contributing to a broader understanding of its psychological and emotional depth.
Freud's psychoanalytic theory suggests that much of our mental life is unconscious. The conscious mind is like the tip of an iceberg, while the larger unconscious mind holds repressed desires and memories, influencing our behavior without us knowing. Freud divides the psyche into three parts. The first one is our primal and instinctual desires, and the second one is ego, the rational part that mediates between the "e" and external reality. And the superego is the moral standards shaped by society. These concepts explain how our inner conflicts between desires, morals, and reality that shape our actions. Now, Freud also identified defense mechanisms that protect the psyche from emotional pain, repression. For example, blocks out traumatic memories or feelings. Other mechanisms, such as denial or projection, help manage conflicts between the id and superego. And as Eliot notes, these unconscious strategies allow us to maintain emotional balance in stressful situations. A fantasy refers to repressed desires that surface in indirect ways, like dreams or behavior. Lyot explains that unresolved fantasies can lead to psychological issues like delusions or even illusions. Fantasies help people cope with unmet needs, often arising from trauma or emotional distress, offering a way to process desires that cannot be fulfilled in reality.
Now, let's look into the psychoanalytic perspective using Freud's theory. Here, we are going to analyze Salama's internal conflict that happens in this story. Now, let me give a brief explanation on Salama's conflict. So, Salama's conflict refers to her internal struggles in war torn Sharia. So, she is torn between the survival mode, which is either leaving the country, and duty or responsibility, which means her staying in Sharia. Quaff as a manifestation of her fears and instincts, and also not forgetting her family's memory, intensifying her sense of responsibility. Now, let's look at the first theory, which is it, that refers to Salama's primal instinct. The it is the part of Salama's personality driven by her most basic instincts, including survival and self preservation. It represents her raw desires and fears during the war. So, in the story, Kaf urges her to leave Sharia to survive, And this highlights how the it manifests through cough, further pushing her to prioritize her survival by leaving the dangerous environment. It also refers to the daydreams of a peaceful life beyond war. This reflects her deepest unconscious yearning for safety, peace, and happiness, elements driven by the it. So here's one of her fierce distortion from the novel. Fear is a cruel thing, the way it distorts thoughts, transforming them from molehills into mountains. So, this reflection captures the its influence, where Salama's primal fears amplify her perception of danger, driving her instinctual desire for self preservation. Moving on to the second theory, which is superego, that refers to Salama's moral duty. The superego represents Salama's sense of morality and her ethical responsibilities towards others. It is the voice that pressures her to act in accordance with her values and the sacrifices of her loved ones. So, this theory can be related to the guilt over abandoning her people and patients. The superego here causes her to feel torn because she doesn't want to betray her moral obligation to help those who depend on her. Her family sacrifices reminds her of her duty. Her memories of her family's courage and sacrifice intensify her commitment to fight for a better future. And then her protection of Lila. Caring for Lila symbolizes Salama's superego driven need to prioritize others' well being over her own fears. This reminds me of Layla's compassionate reminder to Salama. We fight while we're still here, Salama, because this is our country. This is the land of your father and his father before him. Your history is embedded in the soil. No country in the world will love you as yours does. Layla's words here resonate with Salama's superego, reinforcing her moral obligation to her homeland and the legacy of her ancestors, compelling her to stay and serve in Syria despite the personal risk that she had to face. Now, moving on to the next theory, which is ego, the mediator. The ego here is the rational part of Salama's psyche, mediating between her it, primal instincts, and superego, which refers to her moral duties. It helps her weigh the pros and cons of each decision that she makes. So, ego here refers to her when she rationalizes the need for survival while weighing moral guilt. The ego acknowledges that survival is important, but at the same time, it ensures her actions align with ethical obligations. Moreover, it also represents her hesitation and decision making process. Her struggles and internal debates about whether to leave Syria or stay highlights how the ego balances conflicting demands. We fight while we are still here because this is our country. This statement here reflects the ego's role in balancing the id sphere and the superego's duty, as Salama acknowledges the necessity of perseverance in the face of adversity, striving to find equilibrium between her desire for safety and her commitment to her country's future.
Okay, moving on to the next analysis, which is repression as a defense mechanism. It is an action of subduing something by force or an action to suppress a thought or desire in oneself so that it remains unconscious. In psychoanalytic theory, it is the exclusion of distressing memories, thoughts, or feelings from the conscious mind. In the book, As Long as the Lemon Trees Grows, We can find two acts of repressions by the main character, Salama, as she tried to avoid remembering the traumatic events that had happened in her life, which is losing her family members due to the wars. Okay. So as a result, she visualized two images, which is Kauf and Laila, to help ensure her emotional being throughout her days in Syria. The first character that she visualized is Kauf. She depicted him as someone who doesn't look like a human, rather, he tried to look as close as he can be to one. She created Kauf as her defense mechanism after losing her mother in an explosion caused by the Syrian government. Kauf was created unconsciously by her brain to repress her trauma, fear of dying, and losing her loved one. Kauf would always torment her by throwing hateful remarks and threatening her by messing up with her mind. Although often being negative and harsh, one thing that can be concluded was he often pressured Salama to flee into safety, ensuring her survival. For example, in chapter 2, Kauf pressured Salama to have a talk with regarding their plan to flee Syria, and when she refused by giving excuses, he started tormented her by replaying her memories of her dead family members. So, in other words, it can be said that Salama fear of dying and traumatic event leads to the manifestation of Kauf, symbolizing her long need of survival. The second character that she visualized is Laila. Laila is the main character's sister-in-law and also her closest friend. She married Salama's brother Hamza before Homs was being attacked by the Syrian government. As she lost her family members one by one, Laila was the only one she had left to call home. So Salama, not being able to accept the fact that she also had lost Laila in an attack, she started to rewrite her reality, fabricating the fact that she was no longer there with her. So it was revealed in the last few chapters, chapter 29, that Laila was also a defense mechanism that Salama created to ignore the fact that she was hurting mentally and also physically. So the visualization of Laila after her death is just a desperate attempt by Salama to cope with the fact that she had no longer have any family members left.
Okay, moving on to the last concept, which is fantasy. Fantasy, or PH, is an act where one's unconscious mind goes into different realities that are highly possible made up to escape the harsh reality. According to Milton et al. 2011, when thoughts and wishes are blocked and unfulfilled and are frustrated to the extreme level, one will experience fantasies, and it transcends into the construction of dreams, symptoms, sleeps, and jokes. According to Hannah Seckles, 1991, she indicated that fantasies symbolize a deeper dream or daydream where one is desperate to translate fantasy into reality as a defense mechanism. According to Brewer and Freud, 1908, fantasy mostly happens unconsciously as a rebel against repression of what one goes through in life. Fantasy, however, can be formed consciously too, that is known as daydreams. It can turn unconscious fantasy if it gets mixed with repression. So, the chapters that are significantly related to the theory are Chapter 6, Chapter 7, Chapter 14, Chapter 27, and Chapter 29. Okay, moving on to the chapters. The first chapter that is related to the theory is Chapter 6. Salama met Kenan for the first time. This is where her fantasies start. Kenan met Salama at the hospital asking for her to save his sister. Salama began to experience deja vu when Kenan introduced himself, indicating that they have learned about each other before. In Chapter 7, Kenan revealed that they were supposed to meet before the war in Syria broke out. Salama's life changed after the revelation. Next, in Chapter 29, Salama finally realized that Laila was just part of her hallucination when Kenan went to her home and questioned her about Laila. Laila was killed by a sniper when Salama was at the hospital. The hallucination of Laila then assured Salama that it was not her fault and asked her to stop blaming herself. This indicates and symbolizes the end of one of Salama's fantasies. Laila stayed in Salama's mind due to her attachment and love towards Laila as a family member. Laila also became a place where Salama vented. Kenan became one of the factors for Laila to keep appearing as one of her hallucinations. Salama would always tell Laila about how she felt towards Kenan. For example, in chapter 14, Salama and Laila had a cheeky conversation where Laila caught Salama actually felt towards Kenan. Despite Salama being reluctant and denial to Laila's assumption, it was clear that her reaction showed that she actually had fallen in love with Kenan. Feelings give you hope, Salama. These words from Layla gave Salama a realization that she should just accept the feeling and stop denying her love towards Kenan. All these incidents are Salama's unconscious fantasy of denial and repression she experienced. Salama is a person who would like to share her happiness, thus explaining why she experienced unconscious fantasy as she would want Layla to be involved with her happy moments while being flustered over Kenan that she just met and fall in love with. Throughout the story, Salama was troubled with her feelings towards Kenan. As the story progressed, she couldn't help but to fall deeper for Kenan, not only because of his attractive features, but because of his kindness, patriotism towards the country, gentleness, and bravery to help the country. In chapter 16, the author described how Kenan looks in Salama's perspective. In this chapter, Salama was mesmerized with Kenan's attractiveness when she saw him lying on the hospital's bed. Salama was thinking to herself of how beautiful Kenan was when she was being bathed by the sunlight, the way the light made as if they were stars chasing each other in those eyes, and the small upturn of his lips caught Salama's attention. Salama's, Salama described him as if he was dreaming aloud. This scene indicates that Salama is daydreaming about her married life with Kenan that she had been dreaming of. In chapter 27, Salama and Kenan got married at the hospital, with Dr. Ziad as the officiant. In this chapter, one of Salama's fantasy was achieved, which was one of her dreams to marry Kenan. However, soon after the marriage, Salama achieved another one of her fantasy by being heartbroken when she was struck with reality of chapter 29, when she realized that Layla was actually already gone. As sad as it sounds, Salama did overcome the reality that showed she was strong enough to go through that fantasy. To conclude, the language and imagery used by the author for Salama, the main character of the novel, to describe her connection with Kauf and how she perceived Kauf in her mind can also be explained by psychological theories, particularly those pertaining to internal and external centers of conflict. It is made clear to the reader that the trauma is undone and that the scars it causes will reside in the mind of and heart of the main character forever. The struggle continues between hopelessness and optimism, love and fear, perseverance and conflict, but there is also faith in people and love that exists among those who are struggling. With these components, Katouh forces the readers to think about the consequences of international conflict in real life as well as the fight for a peaceful settlement. The theories that have been mentioned throughout the writing perfectly catch the true elements and purposes of the book. The theory that has been chosen is psychoanalytic criticism theory by Sigmund Freud. Psychoanalytic theory is centralized to the idea of unconsciousness where it should be inferred from their effects. It matches with the main character's behavior throughout the story where the main character experiences unconsciousness and unconscious delusions and hallucinations as defense mechanisms and escapisms from the cruel reality. The way the author narrated the story, it is really close to the psychoanalytic criticism theory of Sigmund Freud. For example, under the theory there are three concepts that explain the behavior of the main character and some other important characters. The concepts consist of the id, superego, and ego theory. Second is repression as a defense mechanism, and third is fantasy as a defense mechanism. And these three concepts go well together with the characters in the book, thus make it suitable to analyze the book.